there too, so thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. If everyone would take a seat, please. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. This is, oh gosh, the fourth or fifth time I think that we've done this. I'm always sixth time that we've done this. And I'm always so excited to be able to be here with my friend Ashlyn and to talk about yet another book that she's come up with that she's released out into the world. And this is going to be the first of a new trilogy. Trilogy?
Yes.
Making sure. I will definitely have some spoilers. They will be inadvertent, but it happens every time. So I will try and throw those out there, and she will try not to kick me. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm really excited to announce this new book because we went through the trilogy before, and I was wondering where those characters were going to go. Some of you may have wondered the same thing, and now we know. Now we know. So thank you so much for being here, and please welcome Miss Ashlyn McKayla Ohm. Okay, so this is number 6.
It is
number 6. We started with your devotional, Here in the Woods.
Yes.
We've gone through the trilogy, we have the poetry, and now we've got book 1 of this new series, and I'm really excited. I got a sneak preview, y'all. It's really good. So, we have 4 central characters that we followed through these books. Tell me, what was it that made you decide to do a little bit of a spin-off and a new perspective?
I think that because the characters, there were so many characters, as you know, if you've read the first series, there were a lot of characters whose stories just honestly weren't over, and there was still, I felt like, a lot to say. There was especially, I'm not going to give spoilers, but
I'll take care of that.
as you know, if you read the ending of the last series, there's still a lot of questions that are left unanswered, right? There's a lot that's not resolved, and so this is going to maybe shed some light on some of those questions, answer some of them, and just kind of take it in a new direction, building on what the first series was. And also, I didn't want to say goodbye to my characters. I mean, you take that long to write so many books, and they just become your family.
Right. Well, which brings up the natural question. You've got a new series coming out. Does somebody need to have read the first 3 books in order to understand this book?
Definitely not.
Okay.
So this is if you read the first 3, then this has some added, background that will be fun for you. Kind of some Easter eggs and things, and you'll already be familiar with some of the characters. But definitely, this can absolutely stand alone.
Okay. Well, now this is your 6th time doing this. Do you like speaking in public? Is this hard for you? Is this something you enjoy? Public speaking is something that's really difficult for a lot of people, including Avery. In this book, spoiler number 1. Spoiler number 1. It can be very challenging. Is this something you find challenging, that you find difficult?
I think when people find public speaking difficult, and I definitely understand, because it's not an easy thing for anyone to do. I don't think there's anybody who's like, oh my gosh, I love public speaking. I can just do anything for fun. That's my hobby. But I think though that it's not public speaking for me so much when I do these. It's talking to my friends, my readers. It's talking to the people I wrote this book for. It's being able to talk about something that I've made that I hope is a gift to you. So it's not about me. I think public speaking becomes nerve-wracking when it's about you and how put together you are and how great you sound. And if it's to me, this is about you guys. It's not about me. So it is a lot easier, to approach it that way, I think.
It is easier when you're surrounded by friends, that's for sure. And we've got a lot of friends here tonight. And we're going out live on Facebook, so no pressure. If you miss something here, it will live forever on Facebook. So, again, no pressure at all. No pressure at all. So let's get into the characters. Of course, Addison and Avery are 2 of the main characters that followed through the first 3 books. They're now in this book, but there's been a little bit of a topsy-turvy. Addison has grown up quite a bit. Avery has a lot of questions. There's a lot of things that are going on, like you said, which finished with the third book, and you're now continuing some of those, some of those storylines. At one point, it was Avery who was completely grounded and was helping her younger sister. Now it's the younger sister who is helping, and maybe spoiler number 2. Talk about their dynamic and how that has shifted, and how maybe the younger sister is able to help the older sister.
Well, I think, yes, everybody who's read the first book definitely knows that Addison was like the crazy, scattered younger sister, and Avery was the very calm, steady, and stable one. And I think what you see in this book is their personalities are still the same. They're still the same people, but they are on different journeys at this point. Addison is growing and continuing to move forward on her journey to becoming a lot more mature, a lot more settled, although she still has some curveballs to contend with that might rock her world. Don't say anything.
I may or may not mention them later.
How about may not?
Okay, we'll go with that.
And Avery, meanwhile, is also dealing with her own problems. And I think it's important to kind of explore that, because I think that we can look at people and think, oh, well, they have it all together. Look at them. They're great. They have no problems. They know what they're doing. And a lot of people might have been tempted to do that with Avery. I feel like in the first series, because she was so rooted and grounded. And I think it's important to talk about what happens when, people who are still very much rooted still have questions. And they still have doubts, and they still go through turmoil, and there's a way to handle that.
I think there's something to that. When somebody is always everyone's rock, who is their rock? Right? How does that work? So, and you had a reading for Avery. Let's, if you want to start with that.
Absolutely.
I think this would be a good time to.
This is from early on in the book. So in chapter 1. The morning sky over the mountains was bluer than the wings of the stellar's jays that swooped among the alpine forests. Avery pulled in a deep breath of the frosty air and tugged on the door of her cabin, maneuvering the intricate dance of locking the old doorknob before jogging to her dented green truck. Despite its occasional crankiness, it was solid and reliable, more so than most of the people in her life so far. She slid into the truck and patted the passenger seat. Come on up, Mercy. Her black lab gave a dog's excited yip and scrambled into the cab beside Avery. You're having a good day, aren't you, girl? Morning in the Rockies was its own kind of miracle. And as Avery drove along Devil's Gulch Road, the gentle dance of the first aspen leaves and the rich gleam of slanting sunlight and the clouds curling over Long's Peak twined together into a moment of peace. Yes, she was blessed to live in this wonderful place and to work for its protection at the Estes Valley Mountain Center, pouring her heart back into the mountains that had encircled her with light when she was at her darkest. Her phone rang, shattering the stillness. Tyler. What's up? Avery. Her usually buttoned-up coworker sounded frazzled. Someone's calling in for a bird on Tunnel Road. Injuries possible. Nest fall, I think. Avery's heart clenched. Okay, I'll go get it. The address wasn't hard to find, especially not with a woman standing helplessly in the front yard. She hurried over as soon as Avery pulled in. I'm Martha. Are you from the bird place? I am. Let's have a look. Avery grabbed a pair of leather gloves and empty pet carrier in the back of the truck. Right there. Martha led the way around the side of the house and pointed. That little one. Oh, I see. Avery crept closer, keeping her movements gentle. This little guy was a limp ball of white fluff, far too young to be on the ground. And most worryingly, his wing was folded awkwardly at his side. Is he okay? Martha hovered anxiously behind her. Do you think he's been abandoned? Abandoned. The sharp edges of the wing cut into Avery with a force she hadn't expected. She kept her focus on the hawk. I'm afraid it's possible. The mother may have simply left the nest. Martha's mouth tightened. Not a very good mother. Yeah, she knew about that. Bird mothers weren't the only ones who left their young. Do you think she'll come back? Avery swallowed. fighting to distance the question from taillights on the road and her sister's crying. No, I don't think she'll be back. Her own breath was coming faster, and then the trembling started, her fingers shaking with the force of the past. No, she couldn't give in to this. Not now. Not here. So, what are you going to do? Avery snapped herself loose from the memories. I'm going to take him to the center. What was wrong with her? She hadn't felt that way since... She pulled on her gloves and retrieved the towel she kept inside the crate, deliberately slowing her breathing as she moved toward the hawk. You're okay. Was she talking to him or herself? I've got you now. You're safe. After she loaded up the hawk, said bye to Martha, and begun to drive back to the center, she let out a breath and flexed her fingers on the wheel. What in the high country had brought those memories bubbling up? She hadn't thought about her mom in who knew how long. After all, she left all of that on the other side of the Continental Divide. The girl she'd been then was more of a misty unreality than the folklore that Skylar shared around the campfire. So it didn't matter anymore what had happened before the mountains. What did matter was that she was finally away from the darkness, finally perfecting the one skill that had saved her over and over and over again as she'd run from the pain of her past, never looking back.
Very nice. Very nice. I think many of you, if you've read the first 3 books, so it's not a spoiler, would understand the metaphor there of a bird being left and the mother leaving the nest. And I like the way that you weave those metaphors through your books. One of the things that I also appreciate is that if I hear about Avery from the bird place with the dented green truck in Colorado, I know who that is, right? Those descriptors tell you about that character and tell you, okay, this is somebody who drives a dented green truck and works at the bird place and lives in nature. You know, this isn't the city girl that she was before, right? You know, this is somebody who you can definitely picture, and I think that's some of the way that you write and the way that you develop your characters. You know who that person is. You've seen that person before. You've met that person at one point, and you can identify with them. So I really appreciate that. Now, I've teased you before about the adage about write what you know. And so your first book was about a figure skater and a coffee drinker in Canada.
Yeah.
So, have you been a figure skater?
No.
Have you been to Canada?
Yes.
Ah. And how much coffee have you had recently?
None.
None.
In my life.
In your life. So, write what you know maybe doesn't always... How much research now, in this one though, you turn to some more familiar things. You do hike quite a bit. What about ornithology? That's been a big part of the last book and a part of this book. What attracts you to those things, and what were the challenges, or what are the challenges in writing things you know and writing things that you don't and that maybe require some research?
Well, I think write what you know is less about facts and information. It's what you know here. You know, I think it is important to write what you know. Write from your experience, write from your imagination, you know, write from your creativity, write from things that you know, places you imagine going, situations you've seen unfold in people's lives. You know, maybe even you write from your experience translated kind of into something else. I think that's what you know. You know, information can be researched, and that's certainly true in our day and age, especially. So it's more important to write from what you know here versus what you know here, because you can always find what you need to know for that. But yeah, there's an extensive research process for all of these books, because even though they're fiction, they need to be realistic. I don't want to have details wrong that, you know, certainly I have a lot of informational topics in here. I do have ornithology, I do have wildlife rehabilitation, I have real places, real towns, real streets. I have elements of Native American culture, indigenous culture. you don't want to get any of that wrong. Because, people who live in the town, go to the town, drive on the streets, know. People who are engaged in those kind of careers and occupations, they know. And obviously, if you're writing about somebody's culture and their heritage and their beliefs, then it's only respectful to get it right. And anything that you get wrong is a jarring element and pulls people out of the story. And you lose that connection that you have with the reader. So I just did a lot of research on this, even things that I know about. I am a very avid birder. I do volunteer citizen science work with eBird and Merlin, but wildlife rehab is obviously a step beyond that. And I was really blessed to be able to interview the very kind director of the Rocky Mountain Raptor program in Colorado, who gave me just invaluable guidance in regards to what that process looks like and how that unfolds. And there's so much involved in making sure that there's respect given to the subject to make sure it's done.
Well, and I always feel like if I learn something from a book when I've read it, I read a book recently that was set in Alaska, and I felt like I learned some things about Alaska, and that allowed me to go with the character, because I thought it's a fictional story,
right,
but it becomes real.
Yes.
When the things that you bring up and the research that you do makes it appear as real.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think you do that with Colorado. Tell me a little bit about your affinity for Colorado. That's been something that has been carried through all of the books. Tell me a little bit about what has drawn you to the mountains.
The mountains are my favorite place on earth. Definitely Estes Park, which is where it's been a setting in all of my books, but is the pretty much almost the only setting in this book. And this new story is a place that I visit with my family 3 times a year. We love being there. We hike, we run, we're outdoors the whole time we're there in the mountains. And there is something about the mountains, for me at least, that makes it the place where I can really connect with God and hear His voice a lot better there. It's a place of healing and peace, and a lot of creativity and a lot of creative energy comes out of my travels there. So it's only natural that it makes its way into my books and my writing, and it's also a way for me to spend a little extra time, in this place that I love on the page if I can't be there in real life. So that's really fun.
Do you have a favorite season there?
Fall.
Fall?
Yes.
Okay. Winters are pretty harsh.
Winters are they're not a joke. Yeah.
Right.
They get just a small amount more snow than we do. Just a little bit more.
Yeah.
A few feet more.
Sure. Well, let's talk about my favorite character, and that's Addison. I'm following her through. She started, and she has developed quite a bit. She started as a lost teenager who was very talented, a very talented skater, but was easily manipulated and taken advantage of. And she has grown throughout all of the books and become a mentor in some ways to others. Talk a little bit about her development as a character and as a person.
Yeah. I think throughout the first series, you really saw her arc progress, of going from having some really deep wounds influencing her behavior to starting to overcome some of that and learn some of the truth. And to be taken out of her bad situation and put in the mountains, imagine that, where she can start to, grow into who she is, who she's meant to be, and really start to get that relationship with truth. And I think it is fun to see her, now in this book, and to see how far she has come, what she's achieved in her life, but also just how she's grown into her identity, not as a skater, but as a person. And that's a monumental change, and it is really cool to see that unfold.
How many years have we been with her now in book form? 7 years, 8 years?
8 years, yes.
Yeah. So quite a change from a young teenager to a young woman.
Yes.
I talked about learning things from books, and when I read something and I learn something, I can identify with it more. Talk about Kapemni.
Yes.
Which is a main theme in this book, and that is something that is a word I had not heard before. Talk a little bit about that, where you discovered that, and what it means to you.
I actually don't remember now how I discovered it, but in some research for some book, earlier on, a lot of you who have read the first books will know that I do like to incorporate a lot of Native American mythology and symbolism. It's really a very interesting cosmology and understanding of the way that the universe works. There's a lot of truth. It points to truth, is what I would say. There's a lot of ways that it's easy to see kind of the hand of God pointing past that and through that to something bigger. So it's really interesting to me to work with that mythology and that symbolism. And in some research, I discovered this idea of Kapemni, which is the Lakota concept, and it means as in heaven, so in earth. So it's an earth sky mirroring, so to speak. They envision the physical world as being a cone rising to a point, like a three-dimensional triangle rising up, and then the sky is a three-dimensional triangle coming down, and the two are spinning, are sort of touching at their tip and spinning constantly. And in that tip where the triangles meet, kind of this hourglass shape, in the center of the hourglass is the doorway between the two worlds. Which obviously, we do believe that heaven is invading earth, and at the doorway between the two worlds is Jesus, standing between heaven and earth. And that was such an amazing concept for me to play with, especially when I realized how pervasive that was in indigenous culture. Even the shape of, if you'll think of the shape of a teepee, that is meant to reflect that concept of earth reaching up towards heaven. And so really getting to explore that was really wonderful. And some of you may be familiar with the First Nations version of the Bible, which is a translation that is done by First Nations people, designed for indigenous cultures. And their translation of Matthew 6, 9, and 10 is, "O Great Spirit, our Father from above, we honor your name as sacred and holy. Bring your good road to us, where the beauty of your ways and the spirit world above is reflected in the earth below." So it's, again, this idea, Jesus, as Jesus said, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's an echo of truth in this culture pointing to that.
That's a beautiful interpretation of that. I had not heard that. That's really good. Now you had a reading from the character Creed.
Yes.
You want to talk about him a little bit?
Yes.
Because I think that feeds into that whole idea of Kapemni.
Yes. So Creed, Running Wolf, is a new character in this book. He has not appeared in other books. This is his debut. But he is a videographer who works for a YouTube channel, who ends up coming to the mountains on an assignment and kind of runs into the one person he never wanted to see again. And he turns up at the door. Yeah, thank you. He turns up at the door of the mountain center where Avery works, and their personalities clash majorly.
Maybe.
Possibly. But he also is very driven by this idea of finding a place where for him heaven would touch earth. So for him this idea is aspirational. Can I find a place where I'm at peace, where heaven comes to my world? And so he ends up talking with Avery's mentor, Skyla, at the Mountain Center about this very idea. So,
okay, please.
A deal was a deal, like it or not, which was why Creed was at the office door 5 minutes before 8 o'clock in the morning. Skyla greeted him with the graciousness that seemed to be her rhythm now. "Thank you for coming." "Yeah, of course." He eyed Skyla warily. Back on the res, she had a temper as swift as a snake bite. You found a good place here." "Yes." She turned her face to the morning sun, at peace in a way he'd never seen her. "I am glad you were led here." Led. He wasn't ready to think about the staggering odds of turning up at this address 6 years and 3 states removed from the past. "Well, actually, I was driving by and saw the Kapemni on your sign. That's why I stopped." "Ah, yes. we are told to act Creator's will in the earth below as in the spirit world above, to reflect His greatness and to stand with love in the open door between the worlds. And when we do that, He gives power, heart-healing power. When had Skyla, of all people, taken on his dad's fate? On the res, he'd once seen her spit on the chapel steps. I didn't know you were a walker of the good road. She smiled. It was a journey for me, and it has been wonderful. Well, that's good. He wanted to resent her for selling out to his father's faith. But somehow the way she talked about God felt much more welcoming than the straight-laced sermons of the cheap res chapel. And one more thing. Skyla glanced at a beat-up truck announcing its arrival with a clatter. I have requested Avery to work closely with you. Avery? He couldn't focus on Skyla's words for watching the old beater clamber over the potholes in the driveway. Who's he? Skyla cleared her throat. She is my right-hand assistant. Oh. Embarrassment squirmed through him before he blinked at the implication. There was a woman in that old truck. She is the one who came with me last night. The one who... Oh, no. You mean... The statement died as the woman he couldn't seem to escape swung out of the truck. And then a black dog the size of a small bear bounded after her. She brought her dog to work? Hi, Skyla. The temperature of her voice fell several degrees. Creed. Greetings, Avery. Skyla smiled and patted the bear/dog, who was panting as if coming to the cinder were more exciting than finding a bone. And to you, Mercy. Mercy. Oh, so the woman who judged him up and down had named her dog Mercy. Skyla was still talking. I've already explained to Creed that you will be working with him today. I thought you could begin by showing him the cinder. Yes, right. The woman, Avery, didn't look any happier than Creed felt. The big black dog slobbered over to him. He stepped back. Not a chance, dog. Mercy, come here. Avery yanked the dog back as if Creed had smallpox. Skyla slipped back through the office door. You two take as much time as is needed. The door closed, the period on Skyla's statement. Avery sighed and faced Creed. I guess Skyla has explained the basics to you. Well, sort of. Yeah. He studied Avery, taking note of her appearance for the first time. Tall and thin like an aspen, brown hair chopped off at her shoulders, clothes that looked as if she might leave on a hike at any minute. I'm a Creed. I mean, I know you know that, but right. Her chin tilted slightly up. Well, let's get going.
So they're destined to be besties. Avery's a tough read. She really is. She's a very complex character. Avery has the ability to see things that are unseen. Maybe not in a clairvoyant way, but the ability to look through and find something in someone's soul. Is that fair?
Yes.
Where did her character come from? And do you ever have any characters that are based on people that you know? Or do you borrow things from people that you know?
I think it is the great fear of people who are around authors that authors have characters based on people that
It is.
I will say that I once had a coworker who was certain that I had based a character on her. This is entirely false. However, I tried to convince her of that, and then I realized, no, actually, she wants this character to be based on her. So, okay. So, but I think it's more of a. I think there are not a lot of authors, maybe, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but it's very rare to make a one-to-one, analog. It's much more common that my characters sort of appear in my mind, and they're very shadowy at first, and they sort of flesh out. And you also learn who they are. You put them in scenes. You start writing about them. You write them in different situations. You sort of begin to gauge and understand how they respond. Avery is a complex character, but I've also been writing her for 8 years. So I can see how she would respond in a situation, and it is almost a partnership between character and author, because even though you're the one writing, you want to be true to who the character is and how they've always been portrayed, and you don't want them to make sudden personality, jumps, and you want the consistency there, and you do start to feel that character. Usually characters are a composite. You might get an idea from something someone says, and then you take the truck that someone else drives, or you put a lot of pieces together, and a lot come up, even just that you don't know where you got them. I think Tolkien said that every book starts in the leaf mold of the mind. Like it's in this compost almost of your thoughts and your subconscious, and ideas spring out of that, out of what you've observed, people you've known, even just people you've seen in the grocery store.
And I think you do a good job of that with both Addison and Avery, to have them be consistent, but not predictable.
Right.
Because
yes.
Avery absolutely takes, here, let me tell you about all the turns that Avery has in this book.
Don't listen to me.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. So, last thing I want to ask you, family plays a big role in this book, whether you're talking about sisters or parents. Tell me about how family has affected your writing, and what you have learned from your nuclear family that maybe you've been able to, has helped you become a writer and translate things into writing.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have been very blessed to have wonderful parents who have always supported me in my writing. My mom especially homeschooled me all the way through 12th grade, and once she knew that I wanted to write and this was my desire, then she did everything to make sure that I learned how to write and was given the opportunity to express that. I know so many writers who say, man, when I told my parents I wanted to be a writer, they kind of talked me out of it, and they told me it was a horrible idea, or never make money, they discouraged me, they told me I wasn't very good. And I'm just so thankful that was never my experience. My mom is my editor, so she is the one reading everything I write first, and going through it with me and making sure that it's the best it can possibly be, and that I don't know, switch a character's name halfway through. That may or may not have happened this time. Those are kind of the things you want to catch when you're holding this.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful for her. I'm thankful for my parents. I'm thankful for them. But at the same time, this book was also an exploration of what happens when family goes wrong, and I've certainly felt that too. There are plenty of members of my extended family who did not live well in their stories, is what I would say. And so part of writing this book was dealing with forgiveness, especially in families, especially in those close relationships that you feel safe, you should feel safe in, and you don't. There's a lot of that at play. And I knew when I began writing about forgiveness that I had a choice. I could write about, you could have the typical forgiveness angle of, here comes someone to go down on their knees and beg forgiveness and then it's granted. You can always write about forgiveness that way. But the way that I've had to wrestle with forgiveness most, and the way that I think most people have to wrestle with it, is when there is no apology.
Yeah.
There will never be an apology. There will probably never even be an explanation.
Yeah.
And yet, we still have to wrestle our way to that place for our own sakes and the sakes of everyone around us and everyone after us. And so part of this book is wrestling with, I was not safe because of these people. How do I move past that? How does that stop affecting my life on a day-to-day basis? And again, I'm really grateful to my mom, who broke a major cycle of dysfunction in our family, and who did find forgiveness, and as a result raised me very differently in a way that she was not, and was able to overcome that with God's help. And if you have a copy of the book and you look in the front, you will see that it's dedicated to her because she was the chain breaker in our family, for sure.
And I think a lot of people have found that in their families or in their extended families, how hard it is to find reconciliation when none is offered.
Yes.
And you have to find it within yourself, for yourself,
Yes.
as well as for others. And I think you bring that out of the book really well. Okay, so I always have to ask what's next.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What are we working on now?
Yes. So this is a little bit of a departure for me, but instead of announcing a next book, which I would normally do here,
Which is what I was expecting. So.
sorry. For those of you who might be familiar with Substack, I have a new Substack where I am doing a lot of poetry writing, a lot of article writing, and by article I mean, short and prose as poetry, almost, and kind of some explorations of some nature-based themes, some ideas that percolate while I write these books, and some behind the scenes of writing the books too. So that is called Wild Goose Words, because I believe that the Holy Spirit is like a wild goose. You don't see where he comes from, you don't see where he goes, but you follow him and you chase him to really wonderful destinations.
That's one of my favorite stories of yours, by the way.
I
love that story.
Yes. So Wild Goose Words is this is the announcement of that, and it's live, it's up. There will be content posted there. So even if you maybe already subscribed to my newsletter, you can also choose to get those articles as well. There is a sign-up form at the table for that. And that's what I'm focusing on for right now, certainly.
I would recommend you all do subscribe to that. When we first started this 6, 7, 8 years ago, it's been a long time ago, and I was asked if I would introduce Ashlyn's book, and I thought, this is really sweet. She's done a devotional, and it's her kind of like a diary, and she's cool, and this is going to be really cute. And
Cute, he said.
Wasn't cute, no. It was really good. You know what I mean? She's very young, but for her to write so well beyond her years, the poetry that she puts in just normal words and normal sentences, the amount of times I had to read with her book here and a dictionary here and a thesaurus there. And y'all, I know a lot of words. I mean, so if you get a chance, and it's not just a big mess of big, long words that you won't understand either. She puts things in a context that is easily understood and can translate to your situation as well as any other situation. So please do yourself a favor and do that, and I promise you, I can promise this, I hope,
yes,
that you won't be inundated with a whole bunch of spam
yes,
and 5 text messages a day and all the stuff that you get when you sign up for these things, right?
Yes. So my author newsletter goes out once a month, and the Wild Goose Words will go out once a month as well. So it's a very light load on your inbox for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. If you didn't have a chance to get a book signed, we still have more?
Yes, we do.
So we'll stay as long as we need to. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for being here this evening. Please tip Hannah. She stayed here with us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, got it.